Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Sustainiacs. I am Mike Vincent. I'm always the Sustainiac. I found another one, a kindred spirit, that I just found out a whole bunch of stuff, and I forgot to ask you a couple things before we started. So I'm just going to try this. This is Justin Riney.
You got it.
Right, I got the first one right. He is Sustainability Commercial Manager at Ineos Styrolutions.
Correct.
Holy cow, dude.
And it's for the Americas only.
Yeah. That is unbelievable that I got there, because I usually, if your name's like John Smith and you work at Acme Corp, then I've got it, right? But other than that, it's crazy.
Oh, I get Riney, Renee, Riley. I get whatever. People just half look at whatever my name is and make up their own
well, I just looked at it and I figured, well, it looks like it's kind of German and they forgot the E, so I'm going to go with Riney.
It's actually, it comes from O'Reilly.
Okay.
When my relatives came through Ellis Island, apparently they did not know how to write. And so they scribbled something down, or they said O'Reilly fast or something, and then it morphed into Riney, and it's just been that way ever since.
Yeah, or they came in late in the day and the guy was hungover.
Yeah, I'm tired.
Yeah, whatever.
Another Irish family coming through because of the potato famine.
Yeah,
I don't understand what these people are saying.
Come out Smith or something.
Yeah.
You know? Or a nice Polish name, like Jakubowski or something like that. Like, what?
Yeah.
That's crazy. That is crazy, man. So let's talk about stuff. Let's talk about. I also learned that you're a podcaster.
Yeah, just recently, doing something called the Redefining Plastics podcast. So the whole message behind it is to talk about plastics in a different way. I think if you were to ask just a typical consumer, what are plastics? Like, what do you think when you hear the word plastics? They think oceans, turtles, waterways, crisis. These are all words that you'll hear from people.
The overused picture of the turtle eating a plastic bag that was photoshopped.
Yeah, photoshopped. And most people don't realize that those were photoshopped. And the artist was very clear when he did it, saying that he photoshopped it because he wanted to make the connection. And rightly so. We do have an issue with plastic waste in the environment. I don't think anybody in the industry is going to argue that we don't. I think the issue is, how do we solve it? And right now, it seems like we're not really a part of this, what we need, which is a private-public partnership to solve these things, or just coalitions. EPR is one way to do it, but I think there's so many ways to work to solve this problem. And at the same time, talk about why plastics are used. Why are our products used? They're used because they're a lower carbon footprint. They are recyclable, and they're being recycled. We'd like to recycle more, but they are recycled today. Our products are essential, specifically polystyrene. Polystyrene is one of our biggest products. And most people think styrofoam when you speak about polystyrene, or EPS. But we're talking about products that lightweight cars, that make medical packaging, that keep utensils safe for surgery. They insulate your home. They're used to better electrical efficiency within your homes and energy efficiency. There's so many things that our products do, but everybody just thinks single-use package.
Yeah, there's two things. There's two kind of sayings or mottos or whatever you want to call them, taglines. One's the Plastic Association, right? There's I've got my shirts and they say, we love plastics, we hate plastic waste, right? Yeah. And that's really what it is. And everybody, whether they realize it or not, they don't hate the plastics. They hate the plastic waste. Because even those people that are like, we need to end plastics and do that, they really don't. Because if you and I removed everything plastic around us right now, it should be an episode of Naked and Afraid.
Yeah, you wouldn't have a laptop to record it.
Really, and only the people in the room with us would be able to see it. ever.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And there would be no electricity, and our air conditioning wouldn't work. And suddenly none of that stuff is here. They are absolutely essential. I podcast as well, and it's from the same the same desire or a conviction that you have in that it's not, the plastics aren't evil. It's our misuse of them, or our irresponsible disposal of them. Let's call it that way. Not misuse, but irresponsible disposal of them.
yeah.
That is the issue. And I came into this. Now I'm looking at your background, and we're going to get into this big time because you're a plastics guy through and through, dude. At least your first.
Accidentally. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll get into that, but you
Yeah.
jumped into an extruder, and you've been plastic man ever since. It looks like, and maybe that happened at Milliken. I'm not 100% sure.
No. Yeah. We'll talk about it. It doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense. You can try to look at my resume and try to figure out how to piece these things together. And you won't, because there's no logic to it at all.
Well, I mean, when I look at this, we have a lot more in common than I originally thought. I mean, even from your biblical studies, et cetera,
Yeah.
and on. I jumped into it after 36 years of logistics, not even in plastics. I wasn't in plastics until like 3 or 4 years ago, and I decided that I wanted to get into it. I tried to. You can tell by my background, I'm a closet musician. Well, not closet, but
Yeah.
I do play in a band, and sometimes people like it, and sometimes people throw tomatoes at me and stuff. But it's fun. But I was trying to make plastic stuff for guitar accessories out of ocean plastics, and I ran into this. But long story short, logistics has allowed us, or given us, the opportunity to really exploit the extract, use, and toss, throw away, discard
Mhm.
nature that we find ourselves in, our society that we find ourselves in, which is truly, that's the issue with plastics, right? Is that we and all kinds of things. I mean, it doesn't matter when you talk to like communities. One of their biggest issues in landfill is not plastics; it's biomass,
Yeah. Food waste. Food waste
food
is the
waste,
largest contributor of GHG emissions in any landfill.
and by volume, it's
Yeah.
filling up all the landfills too, right? I mean,
Mhm.
that's
Composting
because
is a big deal. I'm a plastics guy first, but I'm all for composting food waste. And honestly, when you look at plastics, we're extending the shelf life of food, which decreases the amount of food that are going to the landfill, which is helping solve the problem. And not to mention the fact that our products are lighter weight, which is kind of what causes some of the problems when it comes to the end of life scenarios with these materials. But there are solutions to these things. We just got to figure out how to mass implement these solutions. That's the
exactly.
challenge. Yeah.
It is the challenge, and that's why I'm also president CEO of OPT USA, and in that company, which is Ocean Plastic Technologies. But what that is focuses on the logistics, like you're saying, enabling and creating the ability to collect, process, and reuse plastics. Right? I don't
Mhm.
focus because there's a lot of focus on the technologies, right? Whether it's pyrolysis, chemical
Yep.
or not chemical, recycling, et cetera. There's so many people out there doing amazing things and working on it, but none of them will work unless you have the ability to collect the plastics in single streams and get them. And by single stream, I don't mean the stupidity that we do now, where you just gather all the plastics, throw them in one pile, and then we'll sort them out later. That's the stupidest
Yep.
thing ever. We don't do that with rare earth, do we? Do we go and mine a bunch of earth in Southeast Asia, dump a pile of dirt on the docks in San Pedro Harbor there in Los Angeles, and then you just come and pick out your ore that you want?
Not that I'm aware of. That's,
Not that
that's out of my.
yeah, single stream mining doesn't seem like it'd be a good
Yeah.
idea, does it?
Yeah. No, not really. Yeah, I think you touch on an important point there. You've got different organizations that are out there trying to solve for what does recycling look like in the future, and what we've done since the '80s works to an extent. So the single stream, everybody put your material in your green or your blue bin or whatever color it is. It works,
Yeah.
and that material is making its way back. But there are products and applications that are not good fits for the traditional mechanical recycling
Mm.
system. So you've
Yep.
got things like pyrolysis, depolymerization, and the products that we make. So Styrenics, specifically polystyrene, any one of the current advanced recycling processes work with polystyrene, which actually makes it more recyclable than other polymers. And it's going to be a desirable feedstock for these advanced recycling facilities. So it's going to kind of change the narrative around our products as we move forward, which is needed. Because right
Yeah.
now we're losing the battle, and that's why I'm out here every chance I get to talk about why our products are great and why they're used.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dig into that a little bit further since you brought it up. The Ineos and the what is it? Styronics?
It's styrenics, so anything made from
Styrenics.
styrene monomer. So you just think of the chemical styrene. So products that you would make out of that would be polystyrene, ABS. So think durables, toys, things like that. A lot of medical with, and then lightweighting in
ABS is a
cars.
big automotive too, plastic,
Yep,
right? Isn't it? Yeah.
automotive, really big into automotive. So
It's considered like an engineering plastic, right?
yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
much closer to that. So, and then we'll make SAN, NAS, which similar building blocks, just different characteristics of the end product.
Yeah.
So a lot of those things go into medical and in healthcare, or not healthcare, but automotive and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And it's more durable goods. And so when people hear styrene, they get a little squirrely because they think, oh, it's a dangerous chemical. Like, well, chemicals are used in the manufacture of most everything. And
Yeah.
the residual styrene in our products, so what's left over, is not migrating to children or food or whatever it comes into contact with. It's a low diffusion polymer. It's not moving. It's all there, and it's very low content. And it's about the same as what you're seeing in strawberries and cinnamon, and that occurs naturally.
Yeah. So polystyrene, it is when you talk about this, most people just think of styrofoam, right?
Yeah.
Styrene. That's what it is. And maybe some people now are starting to understand other uses for it, uh, like cutlery, plastic cutlery. A lot of that is PS, right? And
Clamshells. So when you get
right,
if you go to a grocery store and you get a salad for takeout, there's a possibility it could be that. Red party
exactly.
cups. If you're in college and you're drinking at a
Pong,
tailgate,
you're
those
playing
red
beer
party
pong.
cups.
Yeah,
Yeah,
beer
that-
pong. A lot of polystyrene in beer pong.
yeah, yeah. We are enabling the delinquency of youth. That's our main goal here.
Well, it's also part of the reason why we're in this business too. I think maybe I
Yeah.
don't know. It's why when I went to medical, went to school to be a doctor, I came out as a business major.
I knew my limitations well before then, so
I
there's no
got you.
chance I would have tried that.
It's
I know what I can do and what I can't do, and being a doctor is definitely on the can't do list. Um,
yeah, but you
our
said a
products
few
go
things.
like go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna no, please go ahead. I'll
No,
save the question.
yeah, I was just gonna say our products go into so much more than what people think, and I
Yeah,
think the main message is our products allow for lightweighting. It's polystyrene allows you to produce things thinner and lighter than other materials, so you're using less product, so there's less waste. Is if you're looking at a lot of these packages and these packaging formats, unfortunately, they're not recycled at a high rate today. So if you choose to move away from one packaging material to another, and you get heavier, you think you're making the right decision, but really what you're doing is you're increasing the material to the landfill, which is
Yeah.
not ideal. And our goal is to solve for those end of life problems. So these packages are recycled. So not only are they
Yeah.
the lightest and best materials for the applications that our customers use, but then we're going to make it fully circular. So we've started an organization called the Polystyrene Recycling Alliance. It's going to actually launch in January. It's going to be a full value chain effort that's going to be focused on increasing recycling access and rates for polystyrene in North America. So US,
Fantastic.
Canada, and Mexico. And it's something that we probably should have done 10 years ago, but there's no better day than now. And right
And
now is
what's it called again?
Polystyrene Recycling Alliance. And so PSRA is what it's going to be called. So it's not fully live yet, but we are already active in working with NGOs and other organizations trying to find solutions to increase the recycling of polystyrene.
That's fantastic, and it's interesting that it's something that you have to do just because it reminds me of issues that I've written about and podcasted about before, like when California, which is always leading in these things, and sometimes I disagree, and sometimes I'm glad they do it because they push us to a new level, even though some of their things are ridiculous a bit, but unless you've got that target that you have to hit, how the efforts and the advancements wouldn't be there, right? If you just had all the time
Mm-hmm.
in the world,
Yeah.
but they sued or changed the law to where companies couldn't put recyclable on packaging and containers and products. And I argued that's baloney. Just because you don't recycle it doesn't mean it's not recyclable.
Mm-hmm.
It's 100% recyclable. We should be putting recyclable. It should be in everybody's face so that they're contacting their communities and complaining and bitching about the fact that they can't recycle it, even though it is 100% recyclable.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
I think
just because
you're
your community only does ones and twos doesn't mean the PS and the PPs and the PVCs and all that other kind of stuff can't be recycled. They 100% can be. You
exactly
just
right.
we just don't do it, right?
I think you're hitting on a very important point there. The legislation that's out there does drive some innovation.
Sure.
There's nothing. I'm not going to say that that doesn't. I think the California SB 54 is a little misguided. It is EPR on steroids with bans and source reduction, different things like that.
Dude, the last time they banned it, they tripled the amount of single-use plastics going into their. And then they
And they
did it again.
recently banned plastic bags entirely, even the recycled. So,
Well, this is the second time they did it, but they
yeah,
claim it's better because now they have a solution for it, but they don't.
no, no. And I think when you work in the legislative space as much as I do, you realize how little a lot of these legislators know about recycling. And they're well
Oh, I thought you were going
intentioned.
to say anything.
Well, I have to work with these people, so I
I
can't.
got you. All right, all right.
I can't say things like that, and
I got you.
honestly, a lot of them really do want to make a difference. They want to make
They
things
do, but
better.
it is doing the right thing wrong, or it's if you use the proper definition of the word ignorant, it's not a bad thing. They just don't. They're trying to do the right thing, but they don't know all the facts, and they can get misguided by experts and consultants.
Experts, I think, is the biggest thing. Not as many consultants, but a lot of lobbyists in the environmental NGOs that are pushing an end to plastics because there's money in it. There's
Yeah,
if you are an anti-plastics organization, you're going to make a lot of money. And I think what's interesting is the messaging from those environmental lobbies using those photos that we talked about earlier, the doctored turtles with straws in their nose. They
Yeah.
use that to drive the narrative. And I think the plastics industry has done a pretty poor job. I'm in it, so I'm going to say it. I'm going to hold my hand up and say we haven't done a very good job of connecting and speaking to consumers directly and where they're
Mhm.
at. When people think of plastics, they think of convenience and end of life issues. When they
Yeah.
think of paper, glass, and metal, they think recyclable.
Mm.
What's interesting is not all of those materials are recycled at very high rates either, but the messaging is out there that it is recycled at a high rate. And so when you look at just recycling participation as a whole, Gen Z participates in recycling at the lowest rate of all generations out there because they've been told their entire lives recycling is a fraud. So
Mhm.
they're not recycling paper, they're not recycling plastic at anywhere near the rate of baby boomers.
Right.
And what we need these people to participate. We need more participation. There are groups out there, great groups that are trying to increase participation in recycling. The recycling partnerships, one of them, where
Oh,
they're spending
fabulous
a lot
people.
of
I know
time. Yeah,
Keith
yeah.
Harrison. She's tremendous. Yeah.
I met with Keith with the PSRA not long ago, and we told her then that she's doing great work. Their efforts to get a curbside bin to every American is a big deal. We need more people to participate. And to use the language from the Plastics Industry Association, I shamelessly steal the recycling is real. It is. We do it. Most everybody in the industry is highly involved in recycling at this point. And then there are private companies out there that have been recycling for 30 plus years and
Yeah.
making, there's a whole cottage industry that's built up around the recycling industry. And there's
But
product coming out of it.
and that's it's a great point that you're bringing up, because one of the things that I try and get across utilizing this platform is that companies like Ineos are not the devil. They're actually out there trying to do things with creating a circular economy with their own products, which other people consider to be, evil. The polystyrenes, et cetera, the plastics, et cetera. Like we need to get rid of them, and they don't understand that Ineos is doing far more than they are, right? and
And,
part of
and,
that
and what they're
hurdle
doing is counterproductive.
is
It's causing
counterproductive.
more material to go to the landfill because they've convinced
Yes,
younger
they're a
generations it doesn't
hurdle.
work. Yeah,
They're a hurdle that their own desire is being inhibited by, right? Their
a
desire is
self-fulfilling
to,
prophecy is what
yeah,
this is.
yeah, it
And and
really is.
and so what the reason why I do podcasts like this, because I know you have reach and consumers are paying attention. Whenever
Sure.
there's a sustainability discussion that happens, people are checking it out and trying to figure out,
Well,
what do I
and
do with this
especially when you
material?
hear somebody like yourself from your inside the industry talking openly and honestly about what the issues are, right? And how to get there and stripping away the hype. We don't need more Native Americans standing by the side of the road crying as someone throws a McDonald's wrapper out the side of the window, that was the recycling messages when I was a kid in the 70s.
Yeah.
That's how they did it, right? They blamed everybody but the industry. That's not what we need, because even we've talked about Keith Harrison and the recycling partnership. Her whole philosophy too is you've got to change the system, give people the ability to recycle in a meaningful way, and then educate them, and then you can expect a behavioral change. You can't just say, "Hey, recycle more. It's your fault." It doesn't work, right?
It takes time too. You have to give the same message 5, 10, 15, 20 times before somebody truly takes it on board. And
Yeah.
so
Well,
whenever I
that's
get the
another point.
opportunity, yeah, I'm going to talk
Yeah.
about this stuff as much as I can, because the alternative is to let other people drive my narrative and
Yeah.
drive the narrative for our products. And I don't think
Right.
I don't think it's fair, and I don't think it's right, for a lack of a better way of saying it.
Well, I applaud what you're doing, and not just because I'm trying to do the same thing, and I'm glad that somebody else of intellect agrees that this is an important thing to do. I've been encouraged by everybody, and you're going to find more and more people as you keep doing it going, man, you're doing the right work, Justin. Keep going, keep going, keep going, because this is what we need throughout the industry on both sides of the coin. They are, because it is very much needed. The statistics that keep coming to my mind that we need to find this solution, this puzzle, solve this Rubik's cube, like places like the Dallas Metroplex. And I love Texas. I'm not trying to disparage them, but this is everywhere. 82% of the households have curbside recycling. They only recycle 4% of their PET bottles. The
Yeah.
one plastic that we've known since the beginning of time that is recyclable, and everybody say it will be, and is recycled at a high rate, the highest rate, is still only 4%. And 82% of the people there have access to just throw it in a bin every day, but they don't. And like something like 86 or 87% of them say, hey, the effort to recycle is worth it, right? It's worth the outcome to put forth the effort. Yet, less than
They aren't
half,
really participating. Yeah.
but they're not participating.
Exactly.
They're not participating.
I don't know the exact percentage, but I think the exact percentage of participation in recycling is somewhere around the mid 40%.
Yeah, exactly. It's somewhat less, a little bit less than half, somewhere around there.
Yeah. And the interesting thing that you'll see is when you look at studies where, and this, I'm not trying to bash the consumer. Let's be clear here. We have confusing messaging. We don't do a good job of talking about recycling as an industry. We don't do a good job of expressing the benefits of plastics. And hey, please recycle this. And it does work. And here, watch the system. So we do a bad job of expressing all of that. But I think if you look at these studies, they show 71+% of people say that they recycle or they're actively recycling every day. And then only 45% are actually doing it. So, how much of this is virtue signaling versus what people truly believe? And I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't do this because consumers don't really care or whatever. I care. I want to recycle more of this material for my business. It's good business for me to recycle more polystyrene or more ABS or more whatever. We want to recycle more. I need more of it collected. And I'm going to keep fighting that battle until we get to 100% recycling access for polystyrene applications. But do people truly care? We need to make them care. We need to be able to communicate to the consumer that this matters.
So is it caring or trust? Because I think there's a bit of trust that's part of the issue there too. Because you said some things, you said a lot of things, and I agree with 100% of them. But you said one in particular that hits me, that could solve a lot of this, and that's you said show them. We got to make them care. We got to show them that it works, and that's transparency, right? And that's
Yeah.
being able to somehow communicate them. And one of the things that the recycling partnership does is, I mean, the research is fantastic, and so is Stina. If you don't know Stina Corporation,
I do.
Amazing. I actually know the CEO and founder of that. I can introduce
Yeah,
you.
we use Resource Recycling Systems, which is also a great organization.
Okay, yeah. But they'll tell you that I think it was something like 80% of their survey don't remember getting any type of communication on recycling over the last 2 years.
Yeah. I had to reach out to the municipality here, and I'm in the Charlotte area, just south of Charlotte in South Carolina. I had to
Yeah.
reach out directly to figure out what was accepted. And I do that just because I'm in the industry and I want to know.
Wow.
And then I want to have a conversation about, well, what about some other materials? And then get to know the MRF and see if I can get polystyrene a part of the conversation. But that's just me being me.
Yeah.
But I think you made a good distinction there. the consumer cares.
Yeah.
The consumer doesn't trust. And
Right.
I think we have a trust issue as a plastics industry.
Well, the mistrust
Trust
makes
the
them not
people.
care, right? I think
Yeah,
not
yeah,
care is an accurate term, but I think that it's a causation of the mistrust, right?
yeah, yeah. It's a good distinction. I think if you look at the 70s and 80s, everybody looked at paper as if paper was the devil. You're losing trees, you're
Yeah.
destroying the earth. But now everybody looks at paper as the savior. And paper is a great material for certain applications. I use
Yeah.
paper products all the time. I came out of the paper industry in a sense for one of the companies. There are a couple of the companies I worked for previously are 50% into paper. So
Right.
I'm all for paper packaging, but
Yeah.
they've done such a good job as an industry expressing the benefits of their material, talking about how highly recyclable it is, and showing people that it's recyclable. And we need to take a page out of that book as a plastics industry and start making those same inroads. And they were talking directly to consumers. And that's what we have to do. And we got to
They
stop talking
were.
to ourselves.
But they've also been recycling for 30 years or 40
And they
years.
put all their own money into it. They
Yeah,
started
it's
their
a
own
mature industry.
organizations.
They
Yeah.
saw the value in getting that material back, and so it's built up. Like most of the MRFs in the southeast are owned by a paper packaging company. I don't know if we want to mention them right now, but we know who we're talking about,
Yeah.
and that's their goal. And it's also part of the issue that I've run across, not particularly with this company, but talking to different communities, is their waste systems have been bid out to third parties, right? And so those contracts prohibit pulling out this type of plastic or that type of plastic because they're committed to a volume of
Yeah.
trash. The verbiage in those old contracts are such that if you went to a judge, you're breaking the contract for community, and you take out all the volume of this type of plastic and gave it to somebody else, because that contract, they get paid by volume of trash, and so it's a money game too, right?
hmm I think going back to, because polystyrene is what I know, and that's
Yeah,
what I focus on. The volume is an issue for us because we're a smaller player in the packaging market. So in the
yeah,
consumer packaged goods market, so we're probably less than 10% of the overall playing field. So that's always been why we've struggled to get our material collected, sorted, and recycled. And we understand
The
that.
volumes aren't big enough to make it economically viable.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
In some areas it is, and it's being recycled and it's accepted, and we want to figure out how those MRFs are doing it. And that's why we've done studies to figure out what the baseline is for the acceptance of polystyrene. And then we built a roadmap through the PSRA to figure out how we can get from where we're at today to where we need to be, which is the widely recycled 60+% access.
Mm,
And so the goal of this whole thing is to take learnings from what other people are doing. And then if you look, we talked a little bit about advanced recycling. Advanced recycling or chemical recycling, pyrolysis, dissolution, what have you, whatever technology
hmm
you want to talk about,
Yeah,
they're going to want polystyrene. And they have openly said that they're going to take polystyrene as a feedstock because they're looking for hydrocarbons, H's and C's. They're
yeah,
looking for polyethylene, polypropylene, and polystyrene. So, one way we could go about this is pyrolysis bales coming out of MRFs in areas that are near advanced recyclers, where you can have your end of line bale in a MRF become a polyethylene, polypropylene, polystyrene mixed bale that can go
yeah,
directly to the advanced recycler that could then go into their process. So you're collecting more material. You're solving for the problem of volume for polystyrene and several polypropylene applications. And you can take films, flexible
yeah.
films possibly, in that process. So there's so many different
Yeah,
ways that we can
because yeah,
solve this.
the films get weeded out because of the mechanical. You can't
Yeah, they're
do
going to get
rigid. Yeah,
they're gum up the system, and
yeah,
there are a lot of reasons why you wouldn't do it. But if you can solve for that, and you can take all the other hard to recycle packaging formats and put them into one bale, that solves for a lot of issues across the entire spectrum. This isn't just a polystyrene solution. This would be solving for
yeah.
other things as well.
If you look at that type of thing, the only thing you got to pull out of there is the PVC, right? I mean, you can't,
Well, yeah,
right?
and Ineos owns
Because
a
that makes the
PVC
sortation
company.
so much
So,
easier. But
yeah,
that makes the
and
sortation so much
yeah,
easier. If you just we'll take all the plastic, just take this one out.
yeah.
That's easy. That
I
can
think
easily.
the PET thermoforms could become an issue in that scenario, though, because
Mm.
you don't want PET in a pyrolysis process.
Yeah, that's
It's a
true.
contaminant.
That's true. So
So
there are
I
still some
think,
contamination issues
yeah,
that happen. Yeah.
but if you can figure, and people are working on getting thermoforms, PET thermoforms into PET bales, which is a good solution, and that's what we should be doing, because then you're collecting all PET and not just
Yeah.
bottles, which is really what's collected at scale today. They're doing great work to increase PET acceptance within those bales, but then that solves for the problem of getting the polypropylene and the polystyrene thermoform clamshells into one bale. These are
Right.
possibilities. These are things that we can do that are future thinking, forward looking, rather
Yeah.
than, hey, let's look at the recycling industry as it is today and not think about how we can innovate. And really what I'm trying to do is figure out how we can innovate so we're collecting and recycling more material.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the whole purpose of OPT USA as well is getting as close to the consumer's hand. So as soon as they're done with that plastic and that piece of polypropylene or polystyrene or high density polyethylene, whatever it happens to be, we get it, right? And we get it in a single resin stream, right? Not all of them together. How do you facilitate that to then solve the costs of the logistics? Because the cost of the logistics is enormous, and what kills it, right?
It's what kills any recycling project.
Yeah,
I think what you really need, and the system of the future, that's
yeah,
going to cost money, and
yeah,
it's going to need the public private partnerships that we talked about. It's going to need EPR to work, but it's going to need EPR that is reasonable and doesn't have product bans or source reduction or anything like that.
yeah.
Because as we said, source reduction, if you're reducing plastics, that just means you're increasing your greenhouse gas emissions by using something else.
Yeah,
Um,
that's something I wanted to touch about, and I because I've talked about that too, and I've done other short videos about it as well. Is like when you take away single use plastic bags and bring back paper, if you remember, paper or plastic, they wanted you to go plastic to save trees, right?
exactly.
Now it's go back to
Back in the
paper.
day, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was the exact opposite. And now they want you to go back to the paper, and the paper is worse for the environment than the plastic.
And the plastic bags are being recycled. The
Yeah,
store drop off, bag to bag. I've
yeah,
worked with and for companies that do that at scale, and it works. We need to do
it
more of that.
absolutely works. In fact, I'm friends with and I've worked with this woman. I'm not going to mention her name because she probably doesn't want it mentioned, but she did a lot of lobbying for different legislation on plastics, etc. And she's a environmentalist. She wants to recycle. She advises us at OPT and stuff. And one of her claims is she was in a state in the Northeast and argued against the ban of plastic bags because it destroyed the rest of the recycling. They got rid
Hmm.
of the plastic bags, and suddenly the recycling industry and efforts that were going on lost all this volume of plastics, and they were losing money and they were starting to go bankrupt. So they were like, no, you can't. You just can't take half the volume of a business away and expect it to survive. It was the
Yeah.
wrong thing. They didn't, like you said before, the experts need to understand what they're talking about before they
We
do
need
so.
public-private partnerships. I'm
Yeah.
gonna say this until the day I die. We need the industry, the plastics industry, to be engaging with not only the consumers but with governments. We need to talk about how we can work together to solve problems.
Yeah.
Because right now, what we're seeing is well intentions and aspirational goals making their way into legislation. When you have that, you have unintended consequences. The New Jersey
Mm.
bag ban is a great example. There was an article that came out that showed that 40% increase in plastic consumption because of that bag ban. And it did the exact opposite of what they wanted.
I
California is
think
the
it
same thing.
tripled the volume going into
Yeah.
in a certain county in California. Yeah.
And what really should have been happening is let's focus on how we can collect the least impactful option, which is the plastic bag. How do we collect that and recycle it in California, in New
Yeah.
Jersey? We need to invest. And then you have the whole cottage recycling industry that's going to pop up around that because you have volume. And now you're going to have people that are looking for other materials. And then that increases the demand signals for PET bottles and PET thermoforms, polypropylene thermoforms, polystyrene thermoforms, and
Mm.
yogurt cups and different things like
Yeah.
that. So you have to create the demand. The demand is there. There's a latent demand for PCR. We have customers that want PCR. What we need is the legislation to drive consumer choices.
Yeah.
I
You
don't
gotta go get
necessarily,
it.
yeah, yeah, and we need to be able to do recycling at a higher scale. And so you need the infrastructure to make this work. And
Right.
there are multiple ways you can go about it. EPR is one way. EPR works when it's done right. I mentioned before that California is not done right.
Well, and that's
I'll
because
make it
they're
very
going backwards, right? You
yeah.
like you said, there has to be this coalition between the industry and government. There needs to be these coalitions and this transparency and this collaboration because of what we're talking about. I mean, EPR, if you go out and ban something and you don't have a solution for it, that's the wrong thing. It
Mhm.
does not work. And we need new infrastructure. So just demanding that there's going to be more recycling doesn't work. I mean, it's like come back every year and go, I told you to recycle more. Well,
Yeah, you're
how?
going to spend all of this money in California. And
Yeah.
if the message keeps getting out there that recycling doesn't work and the industry's narrative, the great efforts at plastics to say
Yeah.
recycling is real, if that doesn't cut through, which I hope it does, and I think it will, then you've got people that are still not participating. So you
Right.
haven't solved the entire problem. You still need the participation, you need the recycling infrastructure, you need the material to get back to the consumer, and the consumer is going to have to pay for it. And I think that's the piece that is still kind of remains to be seen. What's going to happen there?
Yeah. The other part of it is you build this out and you go through your PSRA, right? The
Hmm.
polystyrene
Recycling
recycling line,
Alliance. Yep.
and you discover things. What I've discovered in going through the numbers and working through everything that's going on is um, it's a blue ocean of opportunity out here.
It really
These
is.
solutions don't have to be a money drag or an efficiency
Good
drag on
business.
industry. They
Yeah.
can improve the efficiencies of industries. They can improve digital wealth transfer. If done right and done in a collaborative and transparent environment.
Yeah.
That's an argument, right?
I couldn't agree with you more there. I think the nobody's going to do any of this if it doesn't make business sense, right?
Right.
We're a capitalist society. Uh, our company and every other company is looking to make money. We're also looking to make the right decisions, and we're looking to be better stewards of the environment. And we're
Mm.
going to continue to do those things. We've made commitments to reduce our impact on the environment, increase the amount of material that we recycle, and we're committed to those things. We really want to make those things happen. But we need the system to work in order
Yeah.
for those things to be enabled. So we need to be able to collect our material in order to recycle it, right? I can't I cannot force people to sort and collect and bale my products and then give them to me so that way I can put them back in the system because it's a free market. I have to show people, I have to show the recycling industry that we have end markets, responsible end markets for our products where we want it. You collect it, we'll buy it. And then we will resell those back to our customers where there is that latent demand for the material.
Yeah.
And I need more than I can get today. And that message just hasn't gotten through. And then you got to work through all the other issues of how do we collect materials that are a smaller piece of the stream of the recycling stream. And
Right.
these are challenges that we as an industry are ready to solve. And we want to
Yeah.
work with people to solve them.
Yeah. And so much of the plastics and other, waste occurs outside of a controlled environment where the individual who really wants to do it can control how it's done, right? So you're at an airport or something like that, and you know you have the waste bins, but that people throw random stuff inside these waste bins, right? Or they just don't even worry about because there's a trash can, get rid of it. That's it. And then 2 feet down or 5 feet, 10 feet down is a recycling bin, and they could have put it in that, but they don't because it's just a convenience throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Solving all those solutions is massive, and it can only be done through education, awareness, outreach after you've created this infrastructure to make it work. And I talk to um, companies who purchase or who would purchase PCR and PIR. PCR is something that is more easily marketed. It has better value in for certain reasons and in certain industries. But you're right. I mean, they buy it in a heartbeat. I've talked to people. Hey, if you got a source for PCR polystyrene, I will sign a contract to buy every piece, every pound that you can possibly produce right now. So I mean, it's because it's not there, and they would use it,
Yeah.
but you can't.
And yeah, and it's chicken and the egg too. You got to make sure that you can get the material in the right location at the right
Right.
price to make it work economically. So we talked about the logistics side of it. Moving recycled content around the country gets expensive really quickly.
Well, you got to
So
do it regionally, in my mind. I
exactly.
would argue that you've got to do it in these local, regional things. You've got to
Mhm.
you got a buyer, an end user, or consignee, a buyer of it. You build it in that region. You don't move. You can't take a bunch of yogurt containers from California and ship them to New Jersey. Doesn't work.
No, that'll prohibitively expensive very quickly.
Yeah, incredibly,
Yeah,
incredibly.
and then you just have to define and develop the end markets in each of those regions. It's like a hub and spoke type system. You've got all the collections, you can get it together
Yeah,
into one centralized location. Yeah, I agree. I think that works. And then I think something else that might be part of the future is more plastic specific recycling facilities or perfs where you do secondary sortation. You send the single stream to the material recovery facility, and then what comes out the end is the
that's
end of line plastic bill, and then it goes on to a secondary system.
that's what the Blue Polymers Coalition is trying to do out
Yeah,
in
and
Vegas. Right?
you have the folks like Cyclics with
Mm-hmm.
their triple C in
Yeah,
Houston. There are a lot of people that are looking to solve this, and I think you're going to see even advanced recyclers are going to be doing their own perf sorting systems that are going to take all of those material streams from
yeah,
local MRFs that right now are having to dispose of that in the landfill. How do we divert more of that from the
yeah.
landfill?
Well,
Which
yeah,
is
like
a solution.
that pure cycle, the backed by Procter and Gamble. That's I mean
Mhm.
for polypropylene for PP. That's what they're trying to get done, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you
Um,
just try to take more streams and then sort additional sortation and collect more material because that material has value. Plastics have value at end of life. There wouldn't be industries of recycling companies. Their recycling companies have been around for 40 years, 30, 40
Yeah.
years, that have been recycling this entire time. And they need material. And there's a stronger demand pull on PCR now than there has ever been.
Yeah.
And we need more material. And I think the other piece of this that we haven't touched on yet is we need more food contact material. So we need more extruders to make these recycled products with food contact approval, with letters of non-rejection from the FDA. So that's another investment that needs to be made, and it's
Yeah.
happening, but the FDA can only approve so many of these a year, and it's not fast enough.
It isn't fast enough, and again, I think part of the hurdle is ignorance,
Mhm.
not malicious or because
Yeah, but
they
true
don't
ignorance, just
understand.
unaware. Yeah.
They're unaware. They're trying, and in some instances, I like overprotective, but sometimes it's a hurdle that has to be overcome. And I say ignorance because they're being overprotective in some issues, right? I mean, because it came from a mixed stream, then it can't go through and get the LNO. Uh, and there's, anyways, we can get into all that other kind, other kind. That's a big rabbit hole to go down at this point. But I agree with you, right? It doesn't approve fast enough. The interesting thing to me though is when I first searched like who's got certificates, it was amazing to see how many do
Yeah.
actually have these.
It's growing every year. I think
Yeah,
the difficulty though is just like at California, for example. They want 30% PCR content in packaging. I forget
yeah.
the exact year that they want it by.
I think it was probably
There's
last year.
yeah, I know.
In California. It's
The
retro to 2005.
there's a serious lack of extruders with food contact approval for anything outside of PET bottles
Right.
because that's been going on for so long that that's almost
Yeah,
just like a tacit approval. You use a certain type of extruder with a certain type of melt filtration, you're
you're good.
approved.
Yeah,
And make sure that it's going through the right kind of wash system.
yeah,
It's all of the other polymers that are going to have to get those same kind of approvals, and we really need support to make that happen. And
yeah,
it all comes back to the investment side of things. We need the investments to happen on all aspects of the circular economy, not
mm,
just collection sortation. We need it on reprocessing. We need it on the making sure that there is that demand there by requiring the content, which is fine. We have no issue with requiring PCR content. We just need to make sure that it's available. And if it's not
You've got to
available,
facilitate the means
yeah,
to do it at the same
exactly.
time.
Yeah. And we want to invest in that. The industry wants to invest in it. And
Yeah,
that but we have to know what the playing field is.
yeah,
And we have
absolutely.
to be able to work with the states to make it happen.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. Time has flown, brother.
That's what happens. I talk a lot.
No, no, no.
I get told I
I
talk a
love
lot.
it. I
Yeah.
could keep on and keep on and keep on and keep on, but I have a suspicion that you and I are going to be talking quite a bit and doing more of these type of
Yeah.
uh,
I'm always
podcasts.
available. Yeah.
Yeah, no, because I love geeking out with you. I'd love to get a panel together sometime with you and some other people and talk through some things, bring on some experts in different areas that we know of. And
Honestly, I
um,
think the experts are a good thing, but what I think would be valuable is a conversation where you've got some experts, but then you've also got some lay people in the
oh
room
yeah,
that just truly don't understand
ooh,
any
a
of this,
town hall.
where you can have a real conversation. I think,
Let's get it. We'll get a town hall.
yeah,
That's our goal. Look for it in the
yeah,
future, people. Town hall with Justin Riney and Michael Vincent. We're gonna do
yeah.
a town hall.
I'm all for that. As long as I don't get canceled before then by saying something that somebody doesn't like. And I guarantee I've said something today that somebody's not going to like.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Uh,
that's just a daily occurrence for me. I have
yeah.
that ability. It's like my superpower is pissing people off accidentally.
I don't try to piss people off. I honestly try to just speak truthfully about
Yeah,
these subjects, and I want to find solutions because my main goal is to leave this world a better place than I found it.
right
And I
on.
truly think plastics enable that. And if we're not protecting plastics like polystyrene, because I came up through, I was a buyer of polystyrene back in the day, and I've seen the benefits of the product and I understand why it's used and the applications
Mm,
it's used. And I want to protect those end applications because I know that moving to something else is much worse for the environment. So I
yeah,
want to solve for how do we fix the end of life issues so we can get back to talking about what makes plastics like polystyrene great. And
right on.
that's really the point of all of
Yeah,
these conversations.
and I think it's when you start to talk to people like us, and we have when you're talking about the quality of life of our children and grandchildren and future generations, the future stewards of the planet and stuff like that, you need to know all of the repercussions and unintended consequences and slippery slopes of what you're trying to promote as the solution or the means to create a better quality of life or maintain the quality of life that you have already acquired. And just randomly saying, we got to get rid of this stuff and use that is not right, especially when we already know, if you look at the data, the alternative is worse.
Yep.
So that's not the way to go. And not only from the end of life and the production of the materials, GHG emissions, etc., but when you start, let's get rid of all the plastic containers and turn them into glass. Can you imagine the cost of everything now would
The fuel
skyrocket?
consumption.
The
Yeah.
amount of GHGs we'd be producing, hauling that heavy ass packaging all over the earth now is ridiculous. It would
Yeah.
be such a negative impact. We would end that like that.
And let me be clear, there are really good applications for glass. And
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%.
glass should be a material that's used in multiple different
I'm not
applications.
buying my whiskey in a
Yeah,
plastic bottle, dude.
exactly. And by all means, I get that.
Yeah,
And wine and there are
yeah,
other reasons to use glass. Glass, though, has recycling issues in the U.S. and
sure it
they're
does.
talking about how they're highly recycled, and they're not.
They're not.
Um, and I think the thing is they've just done such a better job than we have of talking about their product to
Yeah,
consumers, and
yeah.
that's where we have to change. We being the plastics industry,
I,
and
I agree, and I
we can't just talk about look at all we're doing to enable recycling. Yes, we do need to talk about that because it's important. But we also need to talk about why does it matter that we're recycling this? Because we're the
yeah,
better solution in 90% of applications in many studies from an LCA perspective, from greenhouse gas, product carbon footprint. However you want to look at it, our products are better for the environment than alternatives. But all people know when you talk to them and you do any kind of community outreach,
mm,
consumer report, or whatever, is plastics are a blight. That's what you hear. You
yeah,
hear, we love it for its convenience. It can't be recycled. We have to change both sides of that equation.
yeah. 100%. And we're going to end on that because I agree with you 100%. And we're out of time, but that was fantastic stuff. Two questions, last questions, and is that a goalie stick that I
Yeah.
see on your wall?
Yeah.
And okay.
And it's
And,
the patent for a hockey stick next to it.
okay. Oh, really? No kidding. That's
Yeah.
cool. So you're a
It's a
player or just a
picture over
fan?
my shoulder. I started playing in my mid 20s in Los Angeles, of all places.
Okay, that's a
I
bizarre
haven't
story.
played since COVID, but
Uh,
I've got a goalie set out there, and then I play defense when
okay,
I'm skating out. So
I got
it's been
on
a
ice.
while.
Are you
On
ice or
ice, yeah,
inline?
ice,
Okay,
yeah,
so you're a real hockey player.
yeah.
Who's your favorite team?
Blackhawks. I grew up in Illinois, so
all right, I'm a Red Wings, Detroit Red Wings.
well, that's not as big of an issue anymore because we're in different conferences and
Yeah, no, but it
rarely
used to
see
be
each
a
other.
real big. It used to be a real
Yeah,
big issue.
you still hear the Detroit sucks chant
Oh yeah,
whenever
sure,
whenever
and
they're in Chicago.
it's not inaccurate these days, really.
Well, you got it better than we do. At least we have
Yeah, I
Connor
know, but
Bedard.
I mean, yeah, I remember going up to the Joe Louis and watching the Russians, right? I mean, when
Yeah.
all the guys. But and lastly, okay, so your podcast, what is it? Where do people find it? And who needs to contact you? And how do they or should they for for Ineos and for the
Yeah.
Alliance?
Yeah. Ineos Styrolution. Just look up our website, Styrolution, Ineos Styrolution. It's pretty
Mm.
simple. And then if you want to find me, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on there, constantly posting about polystyrene,
Yep.
EPS recycling, and different things. You can find my podcast, Redefining Plastics. It's on Apple and YouTube. I am very new to this, so I'm still trying to figure out how to get it on the other the other uh, uh, platforms. But we can talk about that off air. Figure out how to
Yeah.
get that on Spotify and
Yeah,
all that. But
absolutely. Absolutely. Fantastic, brother. I appreciate it. Everybody, hey, welcome. Yeah, welcome. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for downloading the Sustainiacs. I'm Mike Vincent. He's Justin Riney. He just told you how to get in touch with him. I stalked him on actually, I think you were Plastic News Innovator.
yeah.
Yeah.
I try not to pat myself on the back with stuff like that. So
That's
I don't
okay.
talk.
They patted you on
Yeah.
the back, and that's where I
Yeah.
found you. I was looking at it and said, I got to talk to this guy because this guy looks very, very interesting. But you can find him on LinkedIn everywhere, Justin Riney. And tremendous stuff, my friend. I appreciate it very much. Peace and love.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Right on.